think that you'll use pistol in PvE unless the numbers are like way high on 5.
Catalysts have
it seems like
revitalized
offhand axe
ancient
is just
techniques
better.
for
I'm
channeling
ready.
elemental forces.
Here we go.
With a few
Look,
modern
prediction.
improvements.
This is going to be fire and insanely OP. I'm ready.
They use J-Tech spheres to
I'm ready to like.
concentrated
This is
wealth.
going to get
overwhelmed.
crazy.
Let's do
Oh
it.
yeah, I think these
Using
two
their
here,
augment
Vindicator
abilities within
and
range of the spheres,
the Blade Sworn, they're
exceeded
unchained.
expectations.
Yeah, they're out of
You can
control.
witness
They are
Tyrion's
out of
fundamental
control, and
magic
this is about to go
every
crazy.
blow from
This is
their
about to get
hammers.
completely insane.
These elementalists are a steady presence in melee combat.
Pants off.
Here we go. Get ready to coom.
Ellie's already in downstate.
Yep. You're going to be in downstate for a good reason this time. You're going to be losing.
Yes.
All right,
Pants
it is
in
Catalyst
downstate.
time. Indigo, yeah. I hear it's near and dear to your heart.
It's near and dear to my heart.
So tell us about the Catalyst.
Absolutely. So for our Ellie mains out there, and I know we've got Ruby, we've got a Cal. I'm not. I'm a Mesmer main.
I don't understand. How do you do it?
It's self-punishment or something.
I'm a
like
garbage Mesmer.
But Ellie was my very first class that I played in Guild Wars 2 back when I started the game in college. So it is very near and dear to my heart.
Time. Leave the spec when it gets nerfed.
More importantly, Catalysts kind of go back into that theme of having a little bit of an ancient sort of history to them. They were casters from an era bygone, ancient Cantha. Similar to the Willbender, they were protectors of the nation, but not necessarily the throne directly. They were warriors, soldiers. But more importantly, the biggest part of this class is that they utilize this really advanced technology called a sphere. Yes. And in modern days in Cantha, that sphere has been a little bit upgraded into what we call a Jade Tech sphere or a Jade sphere. And now spheres are conduits to the Elementalist immense power.
Gyros, guys.
And they kind of function similarly to a engineer's gyro, and that you kind of summon it and it floats around a little bit.
New playable race. Play as a sphere.
But when I approached writing it, I kind of went with this sort of theme of like a traditional wizard, or so to say.
I was hoping it'd be like Greek gyros. They're delicious.
Elements and environments from all over Tyria, and they imbue that magic into the sphere. And that and as you channel each of the main elements, you'll see imagery of creatures that are known in Cantha. That's somewhat of an homage to the celestial
animals.
And I'm excited for Cal to get into this one. And this was also the first thing that I got to work on with Cal once joining the studio. And Cal's a combat design rock star, so I'm excited to pick his main
CMC, unleash.
Yay.
Here we
All
go.
Right, we're hopping into the Catalyst. Notably,
what is that?
These are definitely not the celestial creatures. We definitely saw a lot of feedback on the Reddit. I mean, clearly we have like there's a Zakir and the Salt
There's
Spray.
more water has appeared, by the way. Seriously,
these
more water is there now.
Yes, those
I'm
are
not
the
joking.
creature shapes that are the same
bottles.
as celestial beings, but that wouldn't really make any sense to conjure those as like kind of elemental manifestations. So these are just more. I mean, elemental manifestations.
Wait, does it? It's got 14k HP, so maybe no extra vitality. Maybe it has some extra vitality.
He's probably wearing
hopping
weird
into it,
armor.
For some reason, we decided to give elementals a hammer. 20 skills. We have a lot to get through here. We're going to try to speed up a little bit and talk really fast. Maybe not that fast, but we'll start with the refreshing mechanic before we get into the hammer.
So there is fucking range.
This is giving me access
oh
to
my
energy.
god!
All the melee believers in shambles.
Above the F5 skill. Very similar to how Warrior Adrenaline works, where hit enemies get energy. And that's going to enable you to deploy. I'm just going to cheat at this point. Deploy the Jade Sphere.
We wanted melee. We wanted ranged.
Essentially, what is a spell area on the ground that the primary goal here is that it's going to be. See, I'm building up might. This is a fire field. If I cast it on an enemy, this is actually also going to do a little bit of damage. In competitive modes, this damage pulse is very, very low. It's actually using the 0.01 multiplier.
Yeah, nice baby rate, everyone.
The primary value of the skill is the boons, it is the combo field, but that was not.
No, that hits a lot. That lasts
forever. Oh my god! Why? What is this field?
The damage pulse on there.
It's like
really in fire. So it didn't create too much of a problem.
It's like, it doesn't hit as hard as Lava Font, but it lasts, man.
With your element. I'm in Fire Attunement.
That's going to be fun in PvP. Put that on the point, you know?
Swap the water.
No, he said the coefficient in PvP is totally different.
Okay.
Dude,
it changes.
It'll barely hit.
Look how sick that is.
Oh my god.
Wait, quickness pulse!
Oh my god. This is a poison field. There's
pulse is pro as well. Oh my god.
Everything, dude. Okay, what thematically
it's well, too, so you can use Chronomancer runes.
Yeah.
Dark. Smoke fields. I mean, I brought it up.
Smoke
And then we were like,
field?
no, bad idea. Don't
This
give
is
it
so
stealth. I've got
busted.
shots on it.
Dude, Ellie,
But it
they
was-
literally gave Ellie
it was
everything
on
they
the table
wanted.
for just a
It's
small amount of
range,
time,
it
and it's
has
got
cell
knocked
boons,
out.
it's
No
melee,
more
it has
on the
cleave, it's tanky, it's
table. Poison
everything.
field. Poison
Oh
field
my god,
notably
fresh
is a valuable
air
thing
with
to have
with the
for
quickness
the
field. Lets you
kind of
use your
bruiser
skills and other
playstyle
things and then
that
come
this
back,
character
stack
has.
Holy
quickness.
shit.
And that is going to be
Oh
very
my
good.
god, fresh air is in.
So honestly, nothing too crazy going with the Jade Sphere. We're going to have a lot of combos in the hammer kit itself that are going to play really well.
Everything
off those
is
combo
in.
fields. You don't actually need a field on the hammer kit at all.
Poison field, you've got all like
Just make sure you
lightning
find all the
field,
tooltips
smoke
for
field,
These deploy skills real quick.
water field, fire field,
There's also going
combos,
to be a
let's
little bit of
go.
interplay with the utilities once we get there, where using them in particular Jade Sphere areas is going to give you a little bit of a bonus effect.
This is Pog.
All right, let's get through the hammer skills rapid fire. 20 skills to get through. We previewed a little bit of the kind of the melee gameplay of this character. It's also going to have kind of some mid-range elements in fire and air. We're going to see a lot more melee in water and earth.
Okay.
And then more of a mid-range DPS character in fire air. And that's because when we're thinking about what is the hammer, what space does this exist for in the Elementalist, the very natural kind of understanding of what is a hammer is this slow-moving, deliberate, lumbering melee bruiser character. But for the Elementalist, Dagger exists in a lot of that space already, so we don't just want to stomp over Dagger and say, okay, here's Hammer. Hammer
Correct
is
design.
the new melee bruiser weapon. So we kind of left a few of those elements there as kind of water and earth, and then made a lot more of the aggressive damage components of this is more of a melee or a mid-range character.
Dude, it's literally fucking
So
range.
starting off, I'm actually
And this is
gonna start
why,
off with skill
guys,
3
making
here,
memes early
'cause this is
makes
kind
you
of
look like a
shared
big
mechanic
dum-dum.
across all 4 attunements. We're going to see this summons a projectile circling around the catalyst.
You can
and this is going
deactivate
to
or whatever you
hit
want.
enemies that it passes through. Pretty exciting stuff. More of a melee skill here,
I just lost
but
this.
notably
Okay.
this does give you access to a little bit of a boost, and it's going to be
get
variable
a damage
per
increase for that.
attunement. We're going to see fire gives you outgoing damage. Makes sense.
And you can reactivate it. What's the reactivate?
So
though?
even if you are kind of standing at range, you're still going to get value.
Oh, is that the
skill
throw?
if
You
throw it?
some damage
Oh!
bonus
Yeah, I
there
think
for
that's the
my
throw,
abilities.
That's the
yeah.
throw.
Some bonus
And you
damage
can, and
there.
it's shared.
And
It's a
then we're
shared
gonna
skill.
have
You can like
a little
chain
bit
them all
of skill
together,
there,
I
but
think.
You see, we have to flip over.
Oh, that is
Yeah,
sick.
it does
recast
four
the circular
colors.
projectile
Oh,
at
that
my
is
target.
epic. This is a
So
gold tier
you're really
spec.
going to want to maximize the uptime of how long I get this damage buff before firing off the skill. But then the super cool interaction is that when I go into water and summon the water projectile, it actually
it increases the cooldown of the
duration
previous
of
ones.
all of the other projectiles.
Yeah, and you
So
can
see
keep
now I
chaining
got 3
them.
going, hop into earth. I have all 4 of these
give
projectiles.
all
these are
four.
going
Oh, that is so
you can
sick.
refire, throw all 4 of those projectiles at your target, and that's going to be kind of the big damage payoff from this kit. And so we see here, now going into the tooltip, we start with each of these circle projectiles are going to be a little bit of damage, a little bit of condition, but the circling component is going to be a little bit lower, and then once you refire it, get
and it chains.
that grand
Oh my
finale is
God,
what the
dude,
skill
this
actually
is it gonna be
called.
insane
You get a
cleave.
higher damage, higher
Activate them all
condition
CMC.
application there.
Do all of it.
So real quick, the buffs here, Earth gives you damage reduction, Air gives you critical chance, Water gives you Condi damage reduction, and as we touched on with Fire, it gives you access to that.
So if you're standing next to someone with all 4, you're just like
so it's going to
spamming
create some
them.
really interesting gameplay. I fired a skill I didn't want to, but that's okay. Create kind of this really interesting gameplay where you're going to be wanting to move through your attunements and fire off these abilities that we'll come back to real quick, making sure that you're casting your spells
What
and
the
getting these
fuck's
refreshes
that?
on
We
these,
have big
these
skills
damage
here.
bonuses before they expire, and then culminating in the big.
At the same time, you're
Oh
giving
my
mega
God.
boons
At
to
the end.
everyone at the same time.
This is big.
So this gives a little bit. One of the goals here is also to give a little bit more incentive to even go into water and earth, for especially in PvE modes where just a little bit. You care a little bit less about those. You want to maximize damage, but now you'll want to duck in for even just a second, cast the circular
And that's
projectile,
only, like, one
extend the rest
skill
of
as
your
well,
damage
by the
buff,
way.
and maximize the damage of that skill. So let's hop back into the fire kit and just hammer through these skills. A lot of damage, a lot of burning on these skills. Nothing too out of place for the hammer or for the fire attunement on Elementalist, that is. Recommend having a target for any projectile skill.
Range burning.
Singeing strike. This is just a burning plus damage. Nothing too crazy.
Cool
Moving into
animation as
surging
well.
flames. This is a different flavor of that skill of a projectile skill.
I
This
just
is
see
not
fresh
gonna be the
air
same
being
shotgun
so
style
busted
mechanic
with
that we
this
see on
kit.
stuff like
I
Fan
see
of Fire.
Celestial
But
doing
the
mega
idea
damage
here
and
is
boons.
because we're looking to target this more mid-range gameplay with fire attunement, this is only going to hit
Hybrid
each target
Ellie
once. And you see there's a little bit
incoming.
of a cooldown protection there. When I cheat and have no recharge, that's going to make sure
Actual
this
full
doesn't
hybrid.
multi-hit, because then we can
Full
guarantee,
hybrid build.
okay, this is always going to do a good amount of damage when I'm playing this character from kind of this mid-range style, and I don't need to dive.
If you mained anything in the first beta, you're in shambles right now.
We do have some
you're
better
actually
defensive options and traits and some of the
on the ground.
Because I mean, we mean about
these are like
how Elemental always
the varsity team. That was like the bench warmers.
All that fun stuff. We do want to make sure there's a few more better defensive options to this character.
I mean, Harbinger's good.
And so we'll get to those in a little bit.
I'll give you that.
And again, keeping.
But Virtuoso compared to this, like, what the fuck? Not even in the same universe.
Moving into Triple Seer, we already talked about Flame Wheel here. So
Virtuoso is like a core spec.
This is kind of a different style of an AoE damage skill. You see it summons actually three
pillars. Okay, that's cool, yeah.
And each of these has its own kind of unique target cap. Yeah. And they all have a much lower damage than you'd expect, because the idea is you want to line them up perfectly. Come over to this
any big
over here, which still has vulnerability from a long time ago. But if you line it up perfectly, all three of these hits, that's going to maximize the damage.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's fun.
So this is going to play really well with crowd control skills, or just enemies that don't move, like these golems or bosses in PvE. Finally, we're going to have Molten End. So we saw a lot of burning on literally all their 4 skills in this kit. Apply burning.
Pretty
so
big
Molten End here, the final skill, is going to reward you for striking a burning enemy. It is going to give you access to Might and Fury per target struck. That guy gave me 1.
This still looks quite
Over
fair
here,
to
it's
me,
going to give
actually.
you a little bit more longer
like disgustingly
and again, this is a blast finisher, so playing well with Jade Sphere, while with Fire Attunement, it's going to give you access to Might stacks. Alternatively, it has this kind of delayed cast time, so there's the opportunity to start casting this ability, switch into water, and then if you move into that field in time, that's going to give you the area blast finisher in a water field AoE healing, which is a little bit more valuable.
Look at that little gyro going around. Look at him.
We're going to go over to the Air Attunement next, because we're going to go through damage, and we'll come back to the kind of melee bruisery style gameplay from water and air.
Okay.
So, Air Attunement, Wind Slam, nothing crazy. Projectile deals damage. We already touched on Muscle Wind here as well, so next up is Hurricane of Pain.
Ooh!
This is the channeled
that's
awesome. That 100 blades style.
Look at that.
Ranged 100 blades, are you serious?
So the idea here is that the Ellie spins their hammer so quickly, and then, redirects their elemental energy and shoots it off into this targeted hurricane over here by all these golems. This is kind of the big damage payoff. You really want to set this up with CC. Moving into Windstorm. This is something that we saw in the video where people were worried about going off cliffs. Well,
oh my god, you disengaged so far.
Here's the kind of the disengage knockdown on there as well, but this is a little bit of if someone's died, you knock them down,
5 targets, by the way.
Space, get into
5
that
targets
mid-range
CC.
style again.
And then you're still ranged, right? So you
maximize
can
your
keep
damage
attacking because you're ranged on hammer.
Oh, another
and finally
CC.
here we have Shock Blast. So this is another kind of, this is a much slower moving projectile. You see, we throw it out.
That's a long one though.
Going to pierce through enemies while it's moving. Once it lands on the ground, we're going to have this kind of delayed explosion, and that's going to be another stun. So some nice crowd control here on the Air Attunement kit. And again, this is kind of a delayed finisher blast.
I wonder what the projectiles are going to look like if you have Juggernaut on.
This out,
it's a real question.
2 minutes, get the field you want, and get that blast finisher. Next up, we're going to move into water. So this is already getting back into that melee style we see here with the auto attack combo. Nothing too crazy. Chill on
it's
the
funny that water is pure melee.
Yeah, I kind of like that though. It's kind of cool.
Second skill, we have Rain of Blows. More chill. This is 3-second chill and a 6-second cooldown is pretty notable. But the caveat here is you have to hit all 4 of these hits against the same target.
Okay.
So rewarding you for either
payoff.
crowd patrolling or just sticking to your target. A little bit of damage on there as well.
I like the artwork. The icons are really good.
Maximize that spacing.
Heal for each target stroke. That is a big heal, actually.
Next up, we have
7k heal if
Crashing
you hit 5 people.
So here's some mobility. You can use this to go in. You can use it to kind of reposition, go out if you need to. Ideally, you're going to go in because it's going to reward you for hitting targets. And it's going to heal per target struck. So
lightning
up in there,
hammer
this is
skill.
also
That
a
is a
finisher.
juicy
Fires
heal.
off in the water sphere, give you a little bit of healing on top. And just a pretty big heal if you do hit all 5 targets. That's also going to set up the final skill of this kit, Cleansing Typhoon. This is going to be a similar kind of PvE AoE hammer swing that gives you access, or it's going to cleanse a condition per target struck. So again, maximize targets, maximize the value of these skills.
Probably doesn't have healing.
Moving into Earth, we're going to see a little bit more defense.
Yeah, not much
tankiness,
healing on the kit,
control.
actually, on water, right?
Nothing crazy on the auto attack skill
only
here.
that
Stone
big
Strike,
payoff.
just PvE damage. Second up, we have Whirling Stones. Another kind of much slower, more deliberate channel. Earth is a little bit less aggressive, so it kind of a little bit slower in how it deals its damage, but it still has a reasonable damage potential from the skill. A lot of bleeding, a lot of damage. if you really maximize all those hits.
Auras.
Rocky Loop again, that's the circular projectile of the Earth Attunement. Next up we have Immutable Stones. This is going to be a single shot, single attack block. This is a mechanic we've seen in a lot of skills across the game.
It's like a
where you block an attack and you get a reward for blocking an attack. In this case the reward is an aura.
Yeah, it's
and that
a
aura is
block
actually
instead.
based on
So you can
attunement.
So you can
if we
swap
just
really
fire off a
quickly.
skill here
And then you can get a different aura.
If I can
Oh, that's
type
pretty juicy. So if
correctly.
you go really quickly to air, you'll get a shocking aura when you block instead of a magnetic aura.
You're
Block
really
that's-
committed to not clicking skills.
Well, I have to type so that to tell the golem, hey, use a skill on me. As you see, I got magnetic aura.
They're
But there's
roasting
a
him for
little bit of a
not clicking
window here,
skills.
especially because the block's also channeled.
Yeah,
I
I'm
can
not sure
start channeling
why.
this
I'm not sure
block
about that
and
one.
Be like, I'm not an
that's gonna make me
idiot.
shocking aura instead. So depending on the situation, you might want to get a different aura depending on, I mean, melee range shocking aura is much better. Maybe you just want the damage mitigation from frost aura, fire aura, whatever.
Okay.
All of those things are available.
That's a
within
cool
the skill.
mechanic, actually.
And then finally we have
Yeah.
ground pound. So this is kind of that big crowd control, also the blast finisher of the Earth Attunement. Instead of just doing another knockdown, that's something the dagger already does. So again, trying to create a little bit more space between those two playstyles. This is going to be a longer duration immobilize, and that allows us to put a little more damage, a little bit of bleeding on
You
top of
can
that.
feel that.
Yeah,
So
that's
again,
gonna-
that very window, and a really big shockwave there applying.
And now it's utility time.
Immobilize and.
Here we go.
I'm ready, dude.
I'm ready.
So next up, we're going to move into the utility skills. So these are augments. That's another
Okay.
skill type that we kind of didn't have something that we wanted to.
Oh, wow.
Something existing, made up augments. What is an
So
augment?
It
For the
depends
most part,
on your
these are
profession mechanic.
kind of duration-based buffs, and we're going to see.
So
a
if
few
you're
flavors
in
of these
water, you
again.
get 5 condis.
And the notable kind of bonus is that if you use these in the
That is
matching
interesting.
element sphere, all of these are going to have particular elements.
That's a
that
bit
they're
weird, though, actually.
associated
It's
with.
got- that
It's
means
going to
if
give you a
you-
little bonus. So we start here with soothing water. This is
Interesting.
just going to be a pretty basic pulse heal over time. Nothing too
If
crazy.
you change over to it
If you
during
use
the
this while you're
cast, do you
inside
get the
the
condis?
water sphere, you won't actually see it on this usage because I don't have any conditions, but each of these pulses will then cleanse a condition as well, so a little bit of extra value there on top. Next I'm going to hop over to Fortified Earth, which
They're
is
not
gonna be the
wells, though.
Earth
They
augment.
aren't wells.
This
They're
one
different,
is
different skill.
kind of where we really felt the need to give LE access to a good defensive utility skill. Obviously we have like Mistform as a hard
3-second
invuln
block.
and a longer cooldown. Earth Shield's a little bit more clunky to use to get that invuln, longer cooldown. Fortified Earth, just a pretty standard channeled block. This is something that LE doesn't really have access to. So giving them access to this on a 30-second
Yeah, it's
cooldown
Earth Shield 2,
should
basically.
kind of enable that melee style a
It's a
little
hard
bit better
block, though.
than
It's like
some
a
of the
hard
existing
block.
options. And the slight
Maybe
bonus
not the most
here is that
exciting
used inside
skills in the
Earth sphere,
universe.
I am going to get
But you do get the
barrier on
barrier
top.
payoff there. So you have that interaction with the profession mechanic, which is kind of cool.
Next up, we're going to move to Invigorating Air. So here's the Stun Break, another pretty reasonable defensive cooldown because it's going to increase your endurance regeneration, which is relevant if I don't have infinite endurance. Yep. So endurance regeneration, nothing crazy. We've seen it before. The bonus here is super speed, a little bit, not the most exciting, but Stun Break,
All right,
defensive value.
all right.
And then finally, we're going to have, not quite finally, but next up we have Shattering Ice. So the idea behind Shattering Ice is that it makes all of your attacks have a splash damage component. There's an ICD on this, kind of similar to One Wolf Pack, but instead of the single target
You get
extra hit, it's
AoE.
going to give you a multi-target extra hit.
Look at that.
And the idea, one of the goals here is that it gives you more energy because you're hitting more targets with all these bonus strikes. Cast this inside the water sphere. All those bonus attacks are going to give you a little bit of chill there. And finally, we have Relentless Fire. So here's the Fire augment. And this one's very straightforward.
You are just
increased outgoing
unblockable.
damage. If you use it
Nice.
inside the Fire sphere, it makes your attacks unblockable. So it really allows you to unleash kind
That
of
is
the
big.
maximum damage potential of this character.
Is that 50% damage
And
mod
finally,
and
last up,
unblockable
we have the
if
elite
you use
skill,
it within fire?
Elemental
That's pretty
Celerity.
good.
This is effectively cooldown reduction. While you have this augment active, all of your outgoing strikes are going to reduce the cooldown of your weapon skills. Obviously, I'm cheating, I have no cooldowns anyway, but in normal gameplay, there's potentially a lot of cooldown reduction, 8-second duration, 1 second off per
1
hit,
second for every
and
attack.
1 second
Wow,
removal. So
okay,
up to 8
that
seconds
is.
of cooldown reduction.
You only get 8 seconds of
for
that,
your
though.
entire weapon kit, which is, as we see here, 20 skills. That's a lot of stuff. This one is actually a kind of a universal augment. It will inherit from any Jade Sphere, give you a boon depending on which element.
I guess
you're
if you hit
attuned to, so it
multiple
might trigger
targets, that's
through
really
more
good, right?
protection.
No, it could only occur one per interval.
So that's all the skills. I mean, we
good?
kind of went
I
through
think
this
it's
kind
kinda
of
bad
as
for
quickly as we
PvE,
possibly
just take
could
FGS.
because we have a lot to cover here. Obviously, you guys are going to get your hands on this next week in the beta, and you're going to be able to experiment a lot more and really
Interesting.
deep dive into a lot of what is going on with these kits.
I think the utils.
but
I think the
next up
utils
we're
kind of
gonna
slightly went.
Cut over
you know,
to something else real
it
quick, and
started
then
out
we'll come
very
back
strong.
and
The
run through
utils
the
maybe
traits
not
for all
quite
the
as
different
impressive.
elite specs.
All right.
Right,
So
that's
that is
Catalyst.
how the beta is going to work. It starts next Tuesday, the 21st. Back to you, Cal.
Thanks.
Ooh.
So back here with the catalyst traits.
No artwork.
Something I forgot to mention on
Do you like
Vindicator
that
while
LE
it's here on
artwork,
the
Melon?
catalyst.
Like a nice
This
red
is
and
not
blue
final
smudge?
art for the trait line, or it's
Yeah,
maybe
the
the catalyst is just a little bit more
Nice
abstract
Photoshop
in
gradient.
its concept, so it's really no, it's just not going to be the final art. We didn't quite get those in for the beta event, but we got some nice colors in there. So that's,
Turns out we're still working on this game. It's not done.
that's one of the values of running beta events, right? Like everything
Ellie just
doesn't
isn't
quite
worthy.
need to be fully
Doesn't
ready to go
deserve
because we
artwork.
still have a lot of time until launch.
LE mains can get artwork when they
so
stop
let's
feeding.
just dive into the traits real quick. A couple things we're going to see. Let's just start out with the minor trait, like we've been doing.
Artwork's
There's a
available
trait
in
called
the
Elemental
gems.
Empowerment, and also
Wait,
gives you a
what?
buff called Elemental Empowerment. So that's
Wait, what?
pretty sensible, I think. Good naming convention.
Wait, what is that? Is it just like
And the idea here is that as long as you're in combat, this is going to be
3%
giving
all
you,
stats? Wait, what? Wait, what the fuck is that? That's 30% all stats baseline.
One moment.
If the fight goes, so
Here's a
that just it just
broken
keeps
thing
going,
called
right? So basically, you have
Night
to be in combat for a minute,
Break
and then you'll go.
everything.
Oh no! I
If
died
you're in
the
combat for a
fractal.
minute-
Okay, we're fine.
You'll never not be the tank in
Okay.
Oh
PvE.
my
Broken armor.
god!
Outrageous. Anyway, let's get back in here and get in combat, and there we go. We have elemental empowerment. So what does this buff?
Oh,
this
wait,
buff
what does it
says,
do,
let's
actually?
leave this on the screen. Okay, it was actually in a decent
Wait.
Elemental empowerment.
Does it stay
this
at
gives you
3?
percentage
Does it go
bonus
up?
to all of your stats. So this is not any sort of flat value.
Wait.
It's going to look at
Oh,
what are
does
my
it stay at
stats.
3?
And
Oh, no,
then
it's
give you a
staying at 3.
percentage
It's
bonus
not
on
going
top
up.
of that.
Okay,
We're
never
going to see
mind.
more ways to
Right.
get access to this buff.
Okay.
And some
Dude.
additional payoffs in
So if you
the
have like 4,000
But so this is
power,
like
it
if I
gives
build
you
Berserker,
way
I'm gonna
much
get more power, more
power.
precision, more
Holy
But it
shit.
says
If I
it says
build
maximum
the
stats
soldiers,
3.
don't
It
build
means you can
soldiers,
increase it
please
another
don't
way.
build
Yeah, there must be
soldiers.
other ways you
But
can
you'll
get it.
get
Yeah.
more power, toughness, vitality. This is, it's going to scale
Unless it
out
just
of
gives
your
you
stats.
3 stacks.
So next
Oh,
up,
yeah,
Elemental
yeah,
Epitome.
okay.
This is kind of the
Oh,
first.
each stack. Okay,
touch
each stack is
into
1%. Okay, that's not
rewarding
actually that
combos.
insane. No,
This is
man.
something
Okay,
we
I
wanted
thought it was
to
like
do
30%.
for this
Okay.
character because
Dude,
we knew
oh
that
my
the Jade
God.
Sphere is going to create these combo fields. We're going to put a lot of combo
Wait,
fields on the
gain
hammer
an
kit.
aura
We
when you
already had a lot
combo
of
in a
combos as
lightning-
well,
what?
Whether it's through arcane
Every
skills or
combo
other
is fucking
weapons or
shocking
basic
aura,
arcana,
bro.
all these things.
Oh, it's
So
10 second cooldown.
Nice.
Getting in a combo
That's still
payoff
pretty
is kind of a
interesting.
cool mechanic thematic to this character. And the payoff here is that you get an aura based on
Lightning Rod Catalyst.
So this is potentially super powerful because it's a per attunement cooldown. I can get magnetic aura and earth, hop into air, combo again, get shocking aura, hop into water.
Oh,
so on
okay,
and
yeah,
so
different
forth.
interval. Yep,
And
yep.
also every time
that
I
is a
gain
fun
an
trait.
aura,
That
I'm
is
going
a
to get a
bulk
stack
trait.
of elemental empowerment.
And when you
So
can,
this is
dude,
notable
aura
when I
share.
gain an
Wait,
aura
what
and
the
not
fuck?
when I apply an aura because this is going to play really well with Tempest. A nice
I
little
guess you
flavor
can't heal, though,
combo
'cause you
between
aren't
elements and
Tempest.
elite specs. If someone else grants me an aura, I still get the elemental empowerment here. We're going to see that interaction a little bit more on some of the other aura traits
Oh.
once we dive into those. And so let's just start off with one of them, hardened auras. We're going to see a lot of aura-related traits across the top of the trait line here. We're going to see a lot of elemental empowerment traits across the middle, and we're going to see
No, I
some
see
more
there.
boon focus, not quite
10%
boon
damage
support, but
reduction
more
if you use chain
sphere,
auras
jade
together.
sphere focused traits along the bottom. And so starting off with hardened auras, every time I gain an aura, it's going to give me a stacking bonus, or a stacking buff called hardened auras. So we'll just demo this super quick, don't need to go too far in there, but see, I get hardened auras, and every time you combo, it's going to then refresh that. This is the mechanic we saw with Lethal Tempo back on the Willbender, where every time you get this trigger, it's going to refresh the duration. So as long as you continue getting auras, whether it's from the trait that we just talked about, Elemental Epitome, or from the rest of your kit, or from your allies, this is going to allow you to kind of maximize that damage reduction up to 10%. Pretty decent for the adept trait slot.
Next.
I'm going to go through all the aura traits first, so switching up my plan a little bit here. Empowering auras is going to be the aura trait of the master tier,
Oh, so
which
I guess they're
is
all a bit
similar
like this.
mechanic. Every time I get an aura, I get a stack of this buff. This gives me outgoing damage, power damage, and condition damage, so potentially up to 10% per 10% overall for each of those damage
I want to see
types
the
if
quickness.
I'm
There's going to be
maintaining my
quickness
aura
somewhere.
stacks. Finally, the Grandmaster is going to be a bit more
the
exciting. This is
airfield
gain
gives you-
stability when you gain an aura. So
Gain
probably not super
stability
Wow,
when
that
you
is
gain
OP.
an
because
aura.
they have access to
Okay.
a lot of auras, so this is potentially a lot of stability. Obviously, every time you combo,
You
if
get
you're
it,
off
yeah.
ground with the Elemental Epitome,
You're going to
then you
get
some
stability.
on top,
That is juicy.
and that's just going to give you a little bit more of that bruiser melee playstyle that will be enabled by having more stability.
You can't share it, guys, but it will be fun.
Next up, we're going to go into the elemental empowerment traits. So there's going to be a few different ways to stack up elemental empowerment, because we saw here max stacks up to 10 times, 10% all stats, pretty powerful as long as you get up there. Vicious empowerment, the first one here, every time you disable a foe or immobilize a foe, it's going to give you a little bit of might and a little bit of empowerment.
Okay.
So this one's going to play pretty nicely with actually arcane power is an interesting, potentially interesting
God,
trait slot.
yeah.
If you take arcane power and you take
Giga mob.
the
Giga
arcane
mob.
trait, because you can share Elemental Surge and then apply all of those things are actually sourced from the Elementalist. That Immobilize is going to give you a bunch of stacks of this, really cap you out in a very short burst window. So potentially an option, maybe Arcane Power gets a little bit more use. Moving into Master Tier, we have Evasive Empowerment. So this is every time you evade an attack, you will get some amount of this empowerment buff, and you also get Vigor.
Okay.
So that'll just kind of keep the train going. Dodge attacks well, get Vigor.
So you can very easily get this. I like that they've done this because notice it's actually going to give you. It's going to make you like a medium class with extra HP too, right? Because you get the extra stats.
Pay off for
you're going to have like you're going to have like
if you are at max stacks, you will
1300
have double effectiveness. So instead of
in full berserker,
you're going to get 2% per stack. At 10 stacks,
so you get 20% all stats if you have that. That's a good trait.
And
that is a juicer.
So to kind of counteract that, it's going to be a little hard to maintain at those high values for a long amount of time, but it's going to create kind of that burst window where you're either super tanky or super offensive.
And that's all
really
stats, guys.
Kind of
20%.
The maximum
that's
potential
big.
Of the character.
With Sally is insane.
Finally,
actually disgusting with Sally.
Jade Sphere, Boony type traits in the bottom line here, with starting with Energized Elements. So every time you swap attunements while you're in combat, you're going to get a little bit of energy. It's also going to give you Fury. So this actually fills an old gap that when we finally
they removed it from Arcane,
Arcane Prowess,
they put it on an elite spec.
Attunement swap, but now the Catalyst
Ellie,
also has access
Imagine
to that
being Core Ellie.
as well, also giving some energy on top. Moving on, we have Spectacular Sphere. So this is whenever you deploy your Jade Sphere, it's going to just do a point-blank AoE boon application in the area. The boons are going to be a little bit less powerful than the pulsing boon of the field itself, but we see Might, Fury, Vigor, or Resistance.
Only when
depending on what attunement you're in, you're going to give a little bit of initial impact.
I feel like that's kind of balanced. It's not that OP.
And finally, we're going to have Sphere Specialist in the Grandmaster.
Dude, what did I say? Oh
especially
my
quickness,
God.
I think, is the most valuable thing.
You love
with the Jade Sphere,
to see it.
Sphere Specialist, boons applied by your sphere have increased duration.
AoE, quickness,
obviously, some of the durations here are a bit on the lower side.
Fresh Air, Selly,
2.5 seconds
tank.
Per tick, so you can be able to stack that up pretty
You can do everything
over
with
the course
this build.
of the Jade Sphere deploy.
And
You're the
it's
tanks,
your
your Selly, your Fresh Air, it's good.
Empowerment.
CMC literally made this. He made Dagger Ellie, but it's
doesn't
hammer.
really have all the tools to be a pure boon support, but
and also ranged.
With Sphere
and also boons.
That's also going to empower the boons from Spectacular Sphere as well.
Every boon.
It's a little bit more of a boon gameplay style option for the Catalyst there. So a few different things you can do, more of that potentially ranged glassy build or that more melee bruiser or maybe a little bit more of the boon side of things. A lot of opportunity. Elementalist as a whole, always a pretty flexible class.
Ellie,
so
pretty much, yeah.
It's
Scrap of E2.
And that's all the traits. We kind of speed ran through all of them. I don't know if anyone has the splits. We'll come back to those, look at those.
Oh yeah, the splits on the speedrun CMC, nice.
Next week and try to beat all the times, but definitely not. Let's not do that. But that's the gist of the Catalyst, and that actually covers all the elite specs. So we'll throw it back to Ruby and Indigo for the wrap-up.
I literally forgot the names, but he was too into the specs.
Cal, thank you for doing so much heavy lifting on this particular stream. That was awesome. You did good work. Thank you all for hanging out with us and for hearing about the next 3 elite specials.